Good morning, everybody. We have two panelists joining us virtually. And since the time we have started our physical events back, I've been finding that I've not been able to have a panel where all my panelists have joined physically. But that's, the reality that we are discussing today, the hybrid model, developing that framework using technology and for the new normal. A few weeks back, for the first time since the pandemic, I went on to Delhi's road during that peak 1 or 2 p.m. Timing. And I was surprised at, how schools are back on track. You saw those school buses, parents lining up outside schools. But at the same time, we remember that how WHO comes up with this warning that we have to live with this virus. And if you see the first quarter this year, you saw a resurging virus, at least in China. Or if I have to recall, just 2 days back, Delhi recorded its highest cases since January 2022. So these viruses here to stay, and we have to work on towards developing a right framework for this hybrid model, right? So panelists, before we start discussing today's topic as to what is that right framework, I want to understand that in the last 2 years, what has been that fundamental change in terms of students approaching their curriculum? How have there been approach to studies, learning, their examination? What has changed for them in these 2 years? And now that we are talking about this hybrid model, how difficult it is for them to go back, after this online learning of 2 years? I'll start with the virtual panelists first. Manoj, if you would like to start.
Yeah, thank you. Could you just confirm that you can hear me?
Yeah, you're audible.
Wonderful. Yeah, good morning to everyone. And I think the most apt that as per the topic itself, okay, we are talking of developing a hybrid framework of education. So we're actually having a hybrid conference as well. So I think that's how we start off with. To answer specifically to what Arjun has asked as what has changed over the last 2 years in particular, I think one first needs to understand who are the people impacted. So there are in the education system, there are 4 fundamental stakeholders. One, okay, are the educators. Second are the teachers. Third are the parents. And fourth are the students. So it's an impact on everybody that we really need to look at, rather than only what happens to the teacher and what happens to the student, because the educators and the parents play an equally important role, okay, in this entire education system. So what has changed? Well, having been in the edtech space personally for the last about 11 to 12 years now, what I have seen is the biggest change which has happened is the skepticism to going digital has vanished. People know that there is no alternate when it happened, and it is that which has taken off the skepticism. And the second thing which has happened is a lot of people have actually woken up from slumber. Like, for example, okay, just to, because we are all, a lot of people in the audience as well as on the panel are from academics, I'll give the example of Newton's law of inertia. I think that Newton's law of inertia has something which has come into play, where the law states that if a body is at rest, it will remain at rest unless it is acted on by an external force. So in this case, the external force has been COVID. And COVID has really shaken up the inertia for change. So people have accepted that change is necessary. The most important thing, therefore, is we have a lot of potential energy. How do I convert that energy into kinetic energy? And I think that's going to be the key to making this change a reality. So that's my 2 bits on the impact. Back to you, Arjun.
Right. Thank you, Manoj. Dr. Kashif, quickly, your opening comments on this?
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. First, I will like to tell you that initially when the COVID period started, the students, when we talk about the students, they were not ready for these things. they were not aware about these environments. So there were different problems which were coming to them while using this, you can say, online model. Even when they adapted this online model of education, they faced a lot of problems that I will categorize into two categories, that is accessibility and affordability. Although people, it is easy to access everything, but they were not able to use the platform from where they can learn these things, from where, whether they were not having right, what you can say, mobile phone, they were not having, what you can say, uh, uh, bandwidth problem was there in India. So these all parameters were somehow disrupting their uses, disrupting to access the, you can say, online education. But slowly when the thing changes and the people started adopting this environment, now the students are not ready to come out of this online education to the offline education mode.
Right.
And the reason being is that now they have come to some, you can say, comfort zone from where they are not ready to go out. So now, while deciding about the curriculum or structure, now the policy makers will have to decide how they can do, you can say, how they can work on the curriculum so that they can give them a hybrid model of education so that they can easily, they can learn from the system. Apart from this, what I would like to tell you is, initially, if suppose a course, a curriculum which is 100% theoretical, if it is that, in that case, you can use what you can go for hybrid model. You can go somehow, but in some cases, you need contact of a student. So offline mode will always exist. Apart from this, there are few things from there you can take the support of this online education system. And although we can say that online education has not, this hybrid model have a lot of scope in future from where they can introduce, they can, in terms of reachability, we will tell that people can reach the maximum, what the maximum people. So in case of reachability also, these things are there. So what I will tell you is, now how, if suppose, if we will talk about the student, that how they are prepared to look for this new normal hybrid education, we can say that they are ready. They can adopt now. In the beginning, there were difficulties, but somehow in last 2 years, they have adopted this environment. And now more or less, you can say they are more preferring that online education rather than this offline education. They are trying to go with online mode of learning. And though you can find that there are different tech companies which are giving different study materials on the different subjects. So they are making them easy for, they are making easy for them to prepare for the examination and whatever sources they need.
Right, Dr. Kashif, thank you. And taking from your response, Professor Rita, I would like you to give your opening comments, because, as far as the students that I talked about, that what has changed for them, I don't have any much interaction with students, but at least in April, when we got to know that things are going back to normal, one thing that was common across school students, college students, was that fear of offline examinations. And as Dr. Kashif said, they've adopted the examination mode that was there prevalent in the last 2 years. Your opening comments on this very quickly as to what has changed and how well prepared they are for this new normal.
Thank you, Arjun. First of all, I would like to say that Professor Manoj Chawla, he had rightly said that during these last 2 years, because of global pandemic, companies like EdTech and FinTech, they took over. Now, as humans, we are able to accept challenges and evolve very fast through those challenges. In fact, we come out stronger. So if we observe our 2 years journey of global pandemic, during which time the systems got disrupted. Initially, all the education system had come to a stop. In fact, it was a halt. And suddenly within 2-3 months, we saw these edtech companies taking over with the online learning concept. And the students at any level, whether it is school level or higher education levels or even teachers, they imbibed this online learning so fast that today when we look back, it seems that, this problem had never come up. And it appears to us that online learning is the only thing now that we have to take further ahead. However, with the opening up again of the schools and colleges, this new model of hybrid learning has suddenly taken off, in which we are basically taking up the pros of the online learning. Because we realized that online learning can, bring education to our doorsteps. It reduces the distances. We are able to work over a lot of such collaborative activities which were not possible earlier when we were doing in an offline mode because of the distances. Now this, it has also brought about a huge paradigm shift in the curriculum. With the online learning, we are also able to inculcate various other aspects of education which was not considered earlier. For example, like now skill-based learning, that has become very easy. Now we are trying to make job creators rather than job seekers. Entrepreneurship has become an important and integral part of the curriculum. So all these things have basically made us to think that those two years of challenge that we faced have made us better, stronger, and maybe we can bring out a future generation which would lead us to even greater heights. That is what my thought process
Right.
is.
Thank you. We've got quite a opening comments on what has changed. Aman, I would like to, know that when we talk about quality learning, and when we are talking or discussing hybrid environment, hybrid framework, what, precisely defines quality learning in a hybrid environment, according to you?
Thanks for that question, Arjun. So I think the metrics or the way we define quality in education, I think remains practically the same. Quality of education will not be defined by online or offline. It is defined by one, outcomes, that is the results. Two, satisfaction of the student, which I think has become all the more easier to ascertain in a hybrid or an online kind of setting, because real time you get a feedback from the recipient of the education, whether that session, that particular class, those 30 minutes worked out for them or not, which I think was not so much possible, or took more time in an offline setting where you could pass on the sheets and take the feedback from the students, but maybe 2 out of or 9 out of 10 times people would not collate that data or would not look at this data. And now in an online or a hybrid setting, you are able to work on that feedback quite quite proactively and in a lot more detail. You're not just able to track whether the students ranked a session by a teacher 3 out of 5. You also are able to track whether the teacher connect was good, whether the pedagogy style was good, whether they were motivating enough or not. So there are many metrics on which you get real-time data and you get deep data to keep improving upon. So I think from that point of view, quality, the definition of the quality remains the same. That is how the customer or how the parent are receiving the education. And secondly, the career, of course, the outcome. That is, what is it that they are learning? How are they succeeding?
Right.
In our setting, for example, the business that I come from, Aakash, it is the ranks that you get in JEE and NEET examination.
Right.
How many ranks are you able to get? So I think those pretty much remain the same.
Right. Thank you, Aman. Professor Ramanujam, if you could now elaborate on this.
I have a different take on this subject, because I strongly feel that what was happening pre-COVID and what is happening post-COVID has fundamentally changed few aspects of learning. Like, for example, we had a lot of barriers on learning. When I say barriers on learning, I seriously mean that the travel cost, living cost, limited availability of faculty. A student had to commit full time. It was basically lecture-based teaching, handwritten notes, assessment was based on retention ability. And post-COVID, there has been a significant change. The materials, the content that was used for teaching, which was pre-COVID, could not have easily been used for post-COVID or could not be used during COVID because, one simple example I'll give you, we in education system did not embrace technology. That's something which we all should understand and appreciate, because we restricted technology in somehow to have a very strong interface with education. I come from a discipline of law. So in 2019, when we were going through this, CLAT is a national level entrance exam, they had to struggle. They had to struggle significantly to organize a national level entrance exam, which is online, because all throughout their life, they were only doing the exam offline. So the reason is the content which they were using, the content that was being used was not readily, easily shiftable from offline platform to online platform. During online, there was severe criticism about student faculty engagement. That is because what we did was we just shifted the typical traditional lecture method from offline to online without understanding how technology had to be embraced. So I have a different take. The new normal that we are talking about is not the combination of online or offline. Rather, it is created what is called as substitute or alternative markets, where institutions, while offering full-time courses, need to also have a substitute product which is online. And if institutions are not offering, I can very easily say that we are missing out on a huge, I would say, ambience, which is today interested in this new normal, which is not a combination of hybrid, but which itself is a new market. For example, right? Jindal started embracing, Jindal started embracing technology. We understood that we were not technically sound. We had to really construct studios. We had to build soundproof studios. We had to really work on investment of audio-visual systems, because recording of the lectures is the key. And how you create infographics and recording of the studios became the key. We started, tying up with upgrade. Let me tell you, our LLM program pre-COVID was struggling to get 100 students. Post-COVID, we have 1,400 students, out of which 1,100 students are, looking at the upgrade online master's program. So obviously there is the moment you are lifting the barriers on learning, like travel cost, leaving cost, your full-time commitment is out now. You have accessible to the world-class faculty. I could get a faculty from Australia, UK, and they can administer the course in a comparative and international perspective, which was not happening that easily. And we all are educators. We know that there is dearth of faculty in India. To get quality faculty, it is very difficult. So obviously, it has had a huge impact in uplifting, and giving on alternative markets for institutions. The quality in terms of application-based learning is significantly improving, because if you have to be online, you cannot be using what materials that you created, which were basically offline. So there has been a significant, I would say, a paradigm shift that is taking place. I think the new normal is for education institutions to have both verticals, online as well as offline. So thank you.
Right. Thank you, Professor Ramanujam. Some really interesting observations. Manoj, I would like to come back to you now. You've listened to the aspects that Aman and Professor Ramanujam just shared. Now, if we talk about the strategies or technologies that can be deployed, to develop that framework for hybrid environment that we're talking, what would be those right strategies or technologies? Or in other words, how can we design it to cater to the aspects that were just shared?
To summarize all strategies in a short period is a very, very difficult answer to give. However, what I'm going to focus on here are some of the key aspects of what we have all been faced with. What we realized over the many years, including the last two years in particular, is that there were a lot of students who were ready to embrace online education, but the real problem of imparting education was with the teachers. So because the teachers were caught unaware, they did not know how to teach using online systems. So like Professor Ramanujam just now said, okay, that the curriculum, the content had to change. You cannot teach the same way as online and offline. And I think that's what happened. So the first part of the strategy should be really to focus on educating the teachers to embrace education, to understand how the change has to be there. And remember, teachers are not the teenagers. They are in the 40s and the 50s, maybe the 60s, who are resistant to change. We are all human beings. So we need to, so I think that's the first focus. Second focus, which I see as a very important one, is majority of India lives, okay, in a lower bandwidth area. So while we may have the best of institutions in the metro cities, the real outreach is in the semi-rural or in the rural areas. And how do I include them? And to be able to get students to really embrace, and not only student will embrace it, but they don't have the means to embrace it. They don't have devices, or even if they have devices, okay, they are not of adequate quality. So where I see the role of technology coming in, where technology should be technology and pedagogy, okay, where technology and pedagogy should be such that instead of only pure live learning, which consumes video, the education pedagogy should consist of conversational techniques, chat bots which are there. Okay, there are SMSs which can be automated, and that's where artificial intelligence really comes into play. So there are some examples. If there is time, I can come back and share more about that. So one is the pedagogy of online, especially for outreach, should be conversational rather than synchronous learning. Second is that the technology platform which is used should be able to really work offline. So how do I teach an online course offline? So if there are recorded content, or if there is some material which needs to be viewed as a video, how can a person who does not have internet have it? Giving you an example, okay, 3 or 4 years ago, okay, when Article 370 was there in JNK, and suddenly there was no internet at all in the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir. What happens to the students there? So they had the means, but they did not have connectivity. So as TriByte, we are a learning management platform company. We got a request from one of our clients, okay, who was in the JEE and NEET teaching space, saying, can you help us reach the students? They want to prepare for IIT, they want to prepare for medical, but they don't have internet. So we created a SD card solution, entire content on a SD drive, which was shipped physically to the students who could thereafter access the content which is online. I think these are some of the key things that I'm just sharing with you, which could be the foundations or the levers on which the strategy can be really made. That's also, it is more about teacher training. It's more about having offline content and having a conversational pedagogy. So that's what I would say.
Right. Thank you, Manoj. You actually included some of the references that may have come in our future questions during the course of this discussion. But Dr. Kashif, your quick comments on this, on the strategies?
I will agree with Mr. Manoj. He has given several comments on that. For me also, effective pedagogical practices and the ease of online digital tools what we are using will help to be successful for this hybrid model.
All right, thank you. Professor Rita, I would want to know that, when we talk about enabling a successful hybrid framework, a key enabler in this is that you have to prioritize, let's say, subjects. It could be some of the subjects that requires full physical or offline learning. Some can be shifted. So when it comes to prioritizing, be it subjects or learning outcomes, what should be the approach?
So here I would primarily like to say that first of all, we need to identify a course which, even if when taught in online mode as well, the student is able to find it interesting, engaging, and see, when we talk of hybrid learning, Arjun, we are discussing a concept where we have a classroom where we have an offline mode student sitting with us, as well as we are able to deliver the same lecture at maybe at international level, national level, or even engage industry into this. Our aim for hybrid learning should be to bridge the gap between industry and academia, bridge the gap between national and international expertise available around us. And that is how we should be able to inculcate those things into our curriculum as well. Now, when we make a course, it is very important that first of all, hour by hour planning of that particular course or program should be discussed, deliberated, and planned in association with the organization with whom you're planning to run the hybrid learning courses. It has to be an hour by hour. So when I say hour by hour, it should be very clear that what activity is to be considered. If I'm taking this 1 hour course, how do I engage the students in this 1 hour course? What would be the experiential learning, participative learning component associated with it? So when we talk of hybrid learning, it is a huge paradigm shift from the theoretical concepts or of face-to-face learning. So it has, you need to put in a lot of efforts before you just float this hybrid learning courses. It cannot happen that, you just link some online course with it and you say it becomes hybrid.
Right.
No, you have to know even the concept of co-teaching comes into picture here.
Right.
You could have a faculty from another university taking some units where the domain expertise is lying with them. It could be faculty from our university, say NorthCap University, taking some part of the unit where we have expertise in that area. Thereafter, we could also open up the options of some project displays that could be done in an offline mode, wherein the parties or the students from different, if they want to visit us, for example, during summertime, they come during that time, and that is the time we evaluate them on the projects. So this type of model we are also following in a university. And last semester, we started with one course and it was a success because we realized in that way we are able to tap potential candidates, students who are, so when we make collaborative projects, the students are also learning from each other. When teachers are collaborating, there is upskilling there. And definitely the organizations, when they collaborate, there is a lot of learning that is involved in that. So this model requires a lot of deliberation, lot of planning before we actually go into it.
Right. Thank you, Professor Rita. Aman, if you would like to add your comments on this prioritizing aspect to what just Professor Rita elaborated.
So I would like to plus one the thought that was shared by Professor Rita. Teaching is not just taking place inside the classroom. There are many other facets of teaching as well, which need to be considered before we classify it as education. And all the more relevant as we move up the grades and towards university based in learning in universities. So it's not just one-way communication from the teacher to the student. As you move up and as you improve the engagement of the of a session, you need to ensure a two-way communication as well. And I mean, I think we all would have experienced it when there is a very interesting session going on. It's not just the teacher delivering the session, it's a conversation. When students start asking you doubts, then it becomes like a proper discussion. Now, as we move hybrid, what we are trying to do is we are trying to mimic an ideal classroom experience into a online experience, or land somewhere in the middle, while getting the benefits of both online as well as offline. The benefits of online being you get the best faculty from all over the region, the country, or the globe. You get to learn with peers not from your own city but from all over the world. And in competitive education, all the more relevant because you need to get a sense how much, how up to date you are, how you are performing. So considering, so we just don't have to consider a subject or a topic to prioritize. We have to prioritize whether we should be whether we should be doing all the classes online or some classes offline, whether we should be doing quarterly or, let's say periodically connects with the parents to do
Right.
some PTMs, whether we should be doing all tests online, or should we do also some online, some offline and try to mimic an actual testing environment. So these are all other sort of facets, and most important, I think, doubt resolution,
Right.
which happens best when, a student is in a sort of, smaller gathering setting, or a one-on-one doubt resolution, which is where probably an offline sort of model works better as compared to an online one. So all these different dimensions need to be deliberated upon, and then a most appropriate optimal hybrid model will emerge, and that may also vary depending on different tiers of students. Like it would be different for JEE, and NEET would be different for,
Right.
say, universities for primary, and so on.
Professor Ramanujan, you've heard both of them elaborating on the strategies or on the aspect of prioritizing. Now, one interesting thing that Dr. Manoj mentioned was the training of teachers. Now, what is the potential that the teachers have in this environment? What is the learning curve that they still have here, given the experience of the past 2 years? If you could elaborate on that.
Thank you so much for asking me that question. See, let me be very honest here. We have just touching on the surfaces of technology which could be used for education. I heard Mr. Kunal is it? Professor?
Dr. Kashif.
Yeah, so Kashif saying that we have to be very clear. There will be certain domains which require that we need to work offline. We have to go offline. We do not understand technology. I'll be very honest with you. I was working with QS, which is world's ranking and rating organization. I was a chief knowledge officer when this entire pandemic happened. One of the parameters that one of the stakeholders wanted to know, which is parents, is how universities are tech ready and technologically ready to provide education. So we did a study called I created a ranking and rating indicator called Education Delivery Through Information Technology. In India, around 300-400 universities participated. They wanted to know how much of tech ready are they, and they want to get a certification from an external agency to showcase how tech savvy they were. But what I wanted to tell you is, many medical institutions did not participate. As engineering colleges did participate, many colleges with humanities participated, but medical institutions had a resistance to participate because they thought that their practical classes could never shift to online. They thought that the exercises and the lab things work that they do on human remains could never be substituted to online. This was the Indian scenario. So we organized a session wherein we bought institutions from abroad involving some of the top universities in Dubai, which in 1 month completely simulated every exercise which was done on offline lab to an online simulation lab, and more effectively so and much more comprehensively so. So the idea is that we are only touching the surface of technology. When I say that is there's a huge responsibility that is on the teachers. Let's be honest, we have not embraced technology in higher education. Why? Even in the practice, for example, the profession of law, when the entire world was hit by COVID, courts for the first time in the history of independence, India stopped functioning because they did not know how to function online, until unless they started embracing technology. And in fact, judges had to upskill themselves how to conduct and carry out the disputes online, right? Forget about the teachers. It's also the potential employers, right? So I feel that it is one thing is how much the institutions want to move online, but I think there's a huge infrastructure and investment question that we also need to ask in terms of training our teachers, capacity building of our teachers, because technology is available. How much of technology we want to use and how much we want to train is the individual decisions of every university. But that doesn't mean to say that these things cannot be substituted. I will go one step forward. If teachers do not embrace technology, the technology will embrace teachers. Some of the teachers can even get replaced. If they do not bring that uniqueness, we are talking about AI, we are talking about IBM Watson today, which has been created by IBM, which is the most sophisticated artificial intelligence lawyer, which can do 100% more efficient work than 10 lawyers put together in a less span of time. So we teachers, we need to know that capacity building, upskilling is going to become really important, right? So technology will be there. Technology, we have not even touched the surface of technology. I think it is very important that we understand that we are not talking to Generation Z students. These are Generation Alpha now. They absolutely understand technology much more deeper in a way we don't understand. So I think, even the NEP says very clearly that the amount of FDP for the faculty members ought to be doubled than what they have. And I think certain FDPs can be focused on the use of technology, which could be useful for the teachers. The capacity building question which you asked is not only relevant, but it is also very important, I think, for teachers and faculty members, I would say, to survive next 20, 30 years.
Right. Thank you, Professor Ramanujam, for that insightful perspective. We have some 7 or 6 minutes left. I'll ask the last question now. And Professor Rita mentioned it in her previous answer, that we have to become that bridge for towards the industry. And that is what I want to understand, Dr. Manoj, starting from you, that we're talking about this framework, we're talking about this new normal, but are we creating our students future ready for the industry that the new India aspires? Are we making them competitive? Will this new framework make them competitive for the industry and make them industry ready?
I think what do we really mean by industry ready? In the first part of what Professor Rita said, where you had asked about what has changed over the last few years, she mentioned it's not only no more only about education, but a lot of entrepreneurship which has come up. So what has really happened? It's not really about being job ready. It's about acknowledging the fact that this pandemic has changed the way that we look at opportunities itself. So it's no more about the job. Also the exposures that the students are getting and the teachers have now started adapting to new technologies. There are newer methods by which new techniques are being used to enable people to operate and figure their paths out. Universities have started offering, and the modern universities surely have started offering multidisciplinary approaches to education. And that's exactly what will make people future ready, not necessarily technology alone. There is, I think, a technology definitely plays a lot of role in it. There is, like Professor Ramanujam spoke about Watson. I don't know whether we are all aware. There's a bot which is called as Jill Watson, created by Professor Ashok Goyal, who's from the Georgia Tech University, who basically uses the entire system of chatbots, where artificial intelligence is answering students on all the doubts that they have and doing it faster, much more efficient, and more critically, very personalized. So which means that there is a lot more change which will happen and make people ready to embrace the future in whatever way they want to, rather than the parent telling the child, beta tumko engineer banna hai, ya doctor banna hai, ya lawyer banna hai. The child now starts choosing what is it that he or she wants to do. So I think it's more, we have opened up the choices for the students to choose what they want rather than being directed to what to do. That's my response.
Right. Thank you, Manoj. Dr. Kashif, your quick closing comments on this?
Sure, it is bringing a lot of change in the education system. First, I'll give you the example. While working for United Nations Population Fund, on a education project, I went to different villages of Bihar. And there I found students are using this online platform. Apart from coming from school, they are reading in government school, but they are using this EdTech platform to support their offline education system. So we can say that anyhow in future it will bring a lot of change in education system of India for a country like India. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kashif. Professor Rita, your closing comments on this?
So as Dr. Kashif rightly mentioned that, even people in rural areas, they have smart phones and technology is available with them. So the generation which is going to come up next, they are all tech savvy. I think challenges would now be with the institutions, that how they are going to provide them the facilities, the infrastructure, the learning material, the content, which is going to make them ready in all aspects, whether it is for the industry, whether they want to have their own startup, their own venture. And with the emerging technologies like your artificial intelligence, as sir rightly mentioned, augmented reality, virtual reality coming up, and definitely the other sector, which is again booming with this, is the cybersecurity. Because without security, none of these tools would have a chance to stay. So with all that coming up, I personally feel that that India is ready to take on any challenge. And after these 2 years of global pandemic challenge that we have faced, and we have come out I'll say again, stronger, better, and more evolved humans. So this technology, along with the human brain, is going to take us to greater heights. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rita. Aman, your comments on this?
Yeah, so I think what hybrid or technology is enabling is there are two parties here. One is the teachers, one is the, let's say, students. They're enabling. So one is there is wider reach for the students. As Professor Rita was mentioning, Dr. Kashif was mentioning, students in Meghalaya now can study from a teacher in probably Georgia Tech, which was not possible earlier. And it's not just one domain of study. And especially now with NEP coming in, you can study, for example, physics, chemistry, and psychology, and some other subjects like even French, and from the best faculty members, not just self-learning. With hybrid coming in, you may have one teacher, like I'm just maybe imagining 10 years down the line, you'll have one teacher in China, one in Austria, one in US, and your local teacher in, let's say, Kanpur as well, who will be clearing your doubts for mathematics and physics. So that's the power of hybrid, which is giving you that personal connect locally, as well as opening up horizons for you, for the teachers, as well as other peers. Because up until now, you were only competing with whatever, your own community. But now you can compete with everyone. So I think that way it's quite enriching.
Right. Thank you, Aman. Professor Ramanujam, your concluding remarks, and possibly then we can have one question from the audience.
I think we are in the era of digital transformation. I think as individuals, we have taken a choice to choose just not restaurants, but also to order food from Swiggy, right? That transformation is happening. We have moved away from taxis to Ola and Ubers because it is giving us more information, more flexibility, more savings in terms of cost. Swiggy is also the same. It is trying to reduce the transaction cost. I don't have to go to a restaurant. I don't need to stand outside the restaurant. I don't need to wait for the tables to be available. I get the food ordered to my house. That is cost saving. That is flexibility, right? And that digital transformation is happening in education. And it will continue to happen in education because the barriers of learning have been lifted. No longer your travel cost, your cost of staying inside the hostels, or cost that you pay for moving to the institution, or to be stuck to one single faculty. Those costs are where the barriers of learning. Now you have the flexibility, you have access to remote learning, you have access to no limit of classrooms. I think slowly that paradigm shift is taking place in education, right? So just three things I would want to say: that the new normal is not the combination of hybrid, which is online and offline. The new model is a new substitute in education, which is alternatives to what you have been doing is in-room classroom, or completely I can do online classroom. And I'm telling you this because, Harvard in 1990 had established what is called as the Harvard Extension School. You'll all be very surprised to see in the last 3 years, it is the second most revenue generation, or I would say high fee collection school amongst all other schools. So that is a sense of direction that it is going to tell us that how the digital transformation, which is already taking place, is going to have a huge impact on education, and the new normal will be alternate forms of education, which is one is offline, which every one has embraced. The other one would be online. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Professor Ramanujam, and in fact, all our panelists who joined us this morning for that insightful commentary on what the framework should be for a hybrid environment. My screen's here showing time's up, so hopefully we'll not have questions. You can talk to our panelists during the networking lunch. But can we have a round of applause for all our panelists who joined this morning? Thank you so much.